Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast.
All right. You ready? Oh, my goodness. Hey, Jack. Hello and welcome to the Gsmc Television Podcast. We are part of the mighty Gsmc Podcast Network, and I'm your host who is fitzing like an Airedale right now because it is hot in D.C., Howard Fletcher. And I'm joined as always by my trusted engineer, Jack the Black Pug. And we are positively honored, excited, and thrilled to be here with you once again. If you're new to the show, I'd like to give you a very warm welcome. Thank you for giving us a try. I always acknowledge that there's a lot of media out there that you could be listening to right now, watching right now. You could be doing anything else right now but listen to me. So we appreciate you choosing to spend some time with us, and we aim to please. So stick around. I'm sure you will hear something that you like. We want you to keep coming back. And if you're one of our loyal return listeners, you know how we feel about you. You are truly the reason why I am here, why Jack is here. So let's have some fun. We have another jam-cram-packed show for you today. ABC. Well, they had to let somebody go for not being a good boss. SNL is trying to get back to work on stage. Back in 30 Rock. I'm going to tell you all about that. My boy, John Fithian, is back, and he's in rarer form than ever, and I cannot wait to tell you about that. I will bring you news as it breaks, because you know I love breaking news, and I am still trying to get some more information for you about the Batman universe on HBO Max. I think I might have a lead. Hopefully I'll have that by the end of the show. But first, let's get started with some breaking I told you so news. Warner Brothers has removed Tenet from its release calendar altogether, delivering a big blow to the exhibition industry at a time when movie theaters had hoped to peg their reopening to the late summer debut of the Christopher Nolan sci-fi thriller. Though necessary given the mass uncertainty over when cinemas across the globe can safely open, the decision further complicates Hollywood's already bumpy plan to revive moviegoing. Tenet was originally scheduled to debut on July 17th, but was pushed back twice until August 12th. And of course, I said it wasn't going to make that date either. It's unclear when it will now welcome audiences, but the studio plans to share a new release date imminently. So they say. Here's a quote. "We will share a new 2020 release date imminently for Tenet, Christopher Nolan's wholly original and mind-blowing feature," said Warner Brothers chairman Toby Emmerich in a statement. He continues, "We are not treating Tenet like a traditional global day and date release, and our upcoming marketing and distribution plans will reflect that," end quote. The studio also announced that The Conjuring 3 has been postponed to June 4th, 2021. Okay, let me repeat that. The Conjuring 3, and I know you all are on pins and needles to see that, has been postponed till June 4th of next year. So I wouldn't be holding my breath for Tenet. The 8th entry in Warner Brothers horror franchise was scheduled to debut in theaters on September 11th. However, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, was supposed to have additional shoots scheduled for April. Since production across the globe hadn't been able to resume, it wouldn't be ready in time for its target release date. So I guess The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, if I'm understanding this correctly, was supposed to come out after this next one, but it wasn't going to be ready, or before. I don't know. The Conjuring has all kinds of stuff. Annabelle's part of that stuff too. They just conjure up more renditions of that movie. Here's another quote. Quote, our goals throughout this process have been to ensure the highest odds of success for our films, while also being ready to support our theater partners with new content as soon as they can safely happen, Emmerich said. He continues, we're grateful for the support we received from exhibitors and remain steadfast in our commitment to the theatrical experience around the world. Unfortunately, the pandemic continues to proliferate, causing us to reevaluate our release dates, end quote. Now, Emmerich is being very, very generous, and as he should be. He should be diplomatic about this because he saw what kind of pushback that Universal got because of streaming some of their features instead of sending them to theaters. However, I don't know what else, the theater owners are supposed to do. Well, could have done. He said they've treated them well. I don't know what else they were supposed to do. They can't do anything unless they get content. Sources at Warner Brothers stress that they have to be flexible with its plans to release Tenet, which means it will not have a traditional theatrical rollout. Movie theaters overseas have already started to reopen, so there's a chance it could launch internationally prior to a domestic release. That would be welcome news for exhibitors in Europe and Asia, two robust movie-going markets that haven't had a Hollywood movie to entice audiences in months. In their plans to reopen, movie theater owners recently expressed concern to Variety, that's where I got most of this information, that the global box office has all but been forgotten by U.S. studios. Now, the global box office has hardly been forgotten by U.S. studios. In fact, they bank on China. But if there's nowhere to show the movie, they can't release a movie. That's the way it is. Previous Nolan films have earned more than 50% of their box office revenues from theaters overseas. That's my point. They haven't forgotten about them. They're just not going to send them over there if no one's going to be able to see them. It doesn't make sense. While most studios have postponed their major movies into late 2020 or 21 and beyond, Nolan has high hopes that Tenet can usher audiences back to theaters, which have been closed since March to help stop the spread of coronavirus. For that reason, Warner Brothers had previously decided to incrementally move Tenet back weeks at a time, rather than postpone it to a significant degree until cinemas across the country are able to safely reopen. Now, insiders at Warner Brothers say they can move forward in select U.S. cities where cases of the virus have eased and public health and government officials deem it safe. It is unclear when movie theaters, especially in major markets like New York City and Los Angeles, will be able to resume operations at a large-scale level. When they do reopen, there's no telling how eager people will be to return to the movies. I've made that point several times on this podcast. Warner Brothers shelled out $200 million to produce Tenet, not including hefty marketing fees, meaning it's no small gamble to unveil the film to the masses. Other anticipated titles from the studio, including Wonder Woman 1984, Dune, the Dune remake, which I mentioned on this podcast, they remain scheduled for 2020. I'm telling you, neither of those films are going to be shown this year. However, they could be moved if coronavirus infections continue to surge. In recent months, the studio also shuffled around opening weekends for Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical In the Heights, and that's going to be released on June 18th of next year. And The Batman with Robert Pattinson, that's going to be June 25th of next year. Tenet stars John David Washington and Robert Pattinson. Nolan, whose credits include the Dark Knight trilogy and Interstellar, wrote and directed the film about a secret agent tasked with preventing another world war. The cast includes Elizabeth Debicki, and I really am sorry I'm not going to be able to see her anytime soon, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Kenneth Branagh. Now, while we're at it, let me plant another seed in your guys' head, okay? Tenet is a Warner Brothers film. You know who owns Warner Brothers? The same people that own HBO Max, AT&T. And I have a feeling that if for some reason they're not going to be feeling comfortable about releasing it in the theaters here until after it's released internationally, if internationally Tenet breaks big and they can see that they're going to make their money, I would not be surprised if they say Tenet is going to be part of an HBO Max package. If you get HBO Max, you're going to get Tenet. Or they're going to release Tenet at the same time on HBO Max, or maybe in a delayed, like about a month delay on HBO Max and put it in the theaters in limited places in the country, because California is jacked up right now. New York is looking good, so they might be able to release it on the East Coast, in New York and DC and in some other cities that are, where the virus is somewhat under control, and then put it on HBO Max for the people out west. Just something to think about, because I'm telling you, this thing is not going away anytime soon. It doesn't look like it. All right, here is some breaking ABC News. ABC News executive Barbara Fedida will not be returning to the Disney-owned unit following an investigation into allegations of insensitive behavior in her treatment of employees, according to a person familiar with the matter. Staffers were notified of the matter Monday, and that was yesterday, in a memo from Peter Rice, chairman of Walt Disney Television. Here's a quote. The investigation substantiated that Ms. Fedida did make some of the unacceptable racially insensitive comments attributed to her. It also substantiated that Ms. Fedida managed in a rough manner and on occasion used crass and inappropriate language, Rice said. Lastly, the investigation found no basis for the claims that Ms. Fedida was the subject of dozens of HR complaints and that ABC News spent millions of dollars in confidential settlements related to Ms. Fedida, as alleged in some press accounts, end quote. In June, a report by the Huffington Post citing interviews with 34 sources raised allegations of a series of insensitive comments by Fedida, often with racial remarks made in front of staffers. Fedida, an award-winning producer, joined ABC News in 2011 as Senior Vice President for Talent and Business. As part of that role, she had a strong influence in determining who ABC News hired and the career paths of many of the news operations journalists and correspondents. She has over the years been seen by staffers as an aide to the unit's top managers, acting as a lieutenant of sorts to former ABC News President Ben Sherwood and other senior ABC News executives. She most recently reported to ABC News President James Goldston. So in other words, if you wanted to do anything at ABC News, you had to go through her. ABC News has placed Fedida on administrative leave while an external law firm probed claims raised by the article. Quote, although Ms. Fedida made contributions to the organization over a 20-year span of her career, in light of the overall findings, we have determined that she can no longer serve in a leadership role and will not be returning to ABC News, Rice said. Disney intends to restructure Fedida's role, he added, with ABC News business affairs being managed separately from talent relations and recruitment. He also said ABC News needed to enhance the culture of inclusion and make further progress on our goals of attracting, fostering, and retaining diverse talent. We will provide more details about these initiatives later this week. In TV news circles, Fedida played a pivotal behind-the-scenes role, and her hiring decisions could help catapult careers. Fedida was the latest media executive to come under scrutiny while the industry grapples with fallout from recent protests over the death of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis. The reaction to Floyd's death has sparked a new national discussion over how people of all backgrounds, races, and creeds are treated in American society. Condé Nast and Vice are among media companies that have negotiated through staffers' allegations about top executives' demeanor toward people of color. Among the claims raised in the Huffington Post story was a remark made when Fedida was involved in negotiations with Good Morning America anchor Robin Roberts' contract. When Fedida and her colleagues were discussing how Roberts wanted more money as part of her contract renewal, the report alleges that Fedida said it wasn't as if ABC was asking the anchor to, quote-unquote, pick cotton. In another incident, Fedida reportedly asked attendees at a company lunch held following mass shooting incidents in the U.S., which ABC News employee would be most likely to be an active shooter. Fedida just can't crack jokes. She's just not good at the art of the tasteful joke. Anyway, in a statement provided to Huffington Post by Fedida's attorney at the time of its initial report, she said, quote, throughout my career, I have been a champion for increased diversity in network news. Building a news division where everyone can thrive has been my life's mission. I am proud of my decades of work hiring, supporting, and promoting talented journalists of color. And unlike these heartbreaking and incredibly misleading claims about me, the track record is well documented and undeniable, end quote. All that might be true, but you still got canned. Part of the art of being a good leader is being able to read the room and know what the signs of the times are. So the theme of today's show is adjusting to change, because I will be talking about the theater owners and my boy John Fithian later on in the show. But next, we will be discussing how SNL wants to try to get back to 30 Rock and start producing their show the way they used to, and some other new shows that are on the horizon. So thanks for listening. Go do whatever you do in the break. We're going to pay some bills. I'll be right back. Thanks for listening. All right. Okay. That's why I treat you white, Jack. I try to stay around. All right. Where are we? SNL. Well, listen, if NBC and Lorne Michaels have their way, NBC's Saturday Night Live this fall could move from being produced but from cast members' homes like we've seen for the last few months to being made the old-fashioned way, live from New York. Michaels and his team are making plans to bring the show back to NBC's Manhattan studios for the venerable late-night program's 46th season, according to two people familiar with the matter. The latest of TV's wee-hour programs to try and navigate a new normal in the midst of a pandemic that makes the process of putting on a TV show anything but easy. Now, when asked, NBC declined to comment on its plans for the next cycle of SNL. To be certain, any concepts for the fall would hinge on how the nation is grappling with the coronavirus pandemic and the safety of the SNL cast and crew. NBC has yet to announce a premiere date for Saturday Night Live. One early strategy calls for the program to be made in a controlled environment, meaning a live audience is not likely going to be part of the current considerations, according to sources. There is a template already in place. NBC's Tonight Show, which Lorne Michaels also oversees, last week started taping new episodes from the network studios in 30 Rockefeller Plaza. These broadcasts included host Jimmy Fallon and a socially distanced Roots band and a handful of mask-wearing cameramen, all working from a smaller facility, NBC's Studio 6A. Guests like Charlize Theron appeared via video conferencing technology. If producers can pull off SNL, it would look vastly different from the 3 final episodes the team put together at the end of the shortened 2019-2020 TV season. In those broadcasts, cast members devised an at-home sketch format. Chloe Fineman did some impressions from her home. Kenan Thompson offered a new take on an old SNL favorite. What's up with that? Rather than hold forth, what's up with that? Okay, I'm sorry. Where was I? Rather than hold forth from the show's traditional perch, Studio 8H, at NBC's 30 Rock headquarters, those programs featured tape sketches as well as a surprise cameo from people like Paul Rudd and Martin Short. Tom Hanks, Brad Pitt, and Kristen Wiig served as hosts. The episodes are fueled less by live audience reaction and more by the editing and post-production effects that could be done by producers behind the scenes. There is a reason for NBC to steer the show back to familiar terrain. SNL tends to thrive during the run-up to a presidential election, which will be in the offing this autumn. In 2016, impressions of Hillary Clinton by cast member Kate McKinnon and of Donald Trump by frequent guest Alec Baldwin proved winning. Ratings soared and viewers gravitated to seeing Melissa McCarthy's impression of former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. SNL antics have long been a part of the national conversation, but the show's buzz was remarkable for a program that had been on the air for more than 4 decades. Plans for a coming SNL season aren't typically revealed until the end of the summer. Some cast members have a growing spate of commitments. Kate McKinnon's involvement with a Hulu dramatic series has long been known, and Kenan Thompson, A.D. Bryant, and Michael Che have other projects under the aegis of Michael's Broadway Video. NBC recently teased a new sitcom featuring Kenan Thompson and Don Johnson. Whether all those actors will juggle all the responsibilities or focus on one likely won't be known definitively for several weeks. All right, here is some Pose is poised breaking news. Pose creator Stephen Canals, or Canals, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I want to say Canals because there was another guy called Stephen Canal, but it looks like just Canals, so I'll call him Stephen Canals, has a new limited series in the works at FX. Titled 81 Words, the series tells the true story of gay activists Frank Kameny and Barbara Giddings, who risked their career reputations to conspire with GAYPA, a clandestine group of closeted psychiatrists, to challenge the American Psychiatric Association's definition of homosexuality. Until 1974, the medical establishment considered gay people sexually deviant and diagnosed them as mentally ill. The show is based on Alex Spiegel's This American Life episode 81 Words, as well as the soon-to-be-released PBS documentary Cured, directed by Bennett Singer and Patrick Salmon. Canals will write and executive produce the project under his Story Avenue Productions banner. Pose Season 1 was nominated for 7 Emmy Awards in 2019, including for Best Drama Series. Series star Billy Porter took home the statuette for the Best Actor in a Drama Series, while the show itself was also a recipient of the 2019 Television Academy Honors. The show is expected to receive numerous nominations for its second season as well, with nominations set to be announced on July 28th. Other recently announced projects at FX include development on a mystery dramedy from Matthew Weiner and the spin-off American Horror Stories, plural. The latter show is a weekly anthology series that will feature a different horror story every episode, whereas the Mothership show featured a different story every season. I think that I will like the spin-off show, American Horror Stories, better. I like anthologies, horror anthology, as those of you who listen to this show know. And the long-form American Horror Story, I never could make it to the end of the season. There are a couple of, I think maybe season 1 and season 2 or 3, I saw the whole season, but usually I'll hang in there for till about episode 6, and then I'm just tired of it. So I think I'm looking forward to the anthology format rather than the long-form format. And here is some David and Spike news. American Utopia, a filmed version of David Byrne's hit Broadway show, will be the opening night presentation of the 45th Toronto International Film Festival. This edition of the annual Canadian gathering for film lovers is unlike any of the previous 44 iterations. Due to coronavirus, TTF, as it's known, will be a mixture of physical and virtual events, and many studios have privately said they don't expect to have a big presence because of the difficulty of traveling during the pandemic. Now, American Utopia was a hot ticket when it hit Broadway in late fall of 2019. Now, that's true, because my partner Joan and I tried to get tickets to it, and while we didn't break our necks trying to get it, it was hard to get, and they were really expensive. And it played to sold-out crowds through February of 2020. Spike Lee shot the production during its Hudson Theater run, and the concert film will air on HBO this fall. That's why it's on the TV podcast. That's why I'm talking about it. It will screen in Toronto on September 10th, the same day it premieres on the cable channel. The TIFF selection continues a hot streak for Lee, who released the acclaimed Netflix drama The Five Bloods over the summer and recently won an Oscar for co-writing 2018's Black Klansman. The concert consists of performances of songs of Byrne's 2018 solo album of the same name, as well as works from his Talking Heads years, such as Once in a Lifetime and Burning Down the House. Byrne also covered Janelle Monáe's Hell You Taobao, a protest song about police brutality that could not feel more timely. Byrne sings, plays instruments, and dances along with an 11-person troupe, all while performing high-energy choreography by Ann B. Parson. It's a good thing the 68-year-old Byrne is an avid cyclist, because apparently he gets quite a workout in this deal, and that's one of the reasons why Joan and I wanted to go. Here's a quote. "This joyful film takes audiences on a musical journey about openness, optimism, and faith in humanity," said Jonah Vincente, executive director and co-head of TIFF, in a statement. "This is especially poignant at a time of great uncertainty around the world. We are eager to share the excitement of opening night with audiences," end quote. Here's another quote. Quote, "Spike Lee has somehow always been exactly of his moment and ahead of his time," said Cameron Bailey, artistic director and co-head of TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, for those of you who have forgotten, in a statement. He continues, "With Byrne's American Utopia, he brings Byrne's classic songs and joyous stagecraft to the screen just when we need it. Spike's latest joint is a call to connect with one another, to protest injustice, and above all, to celebrate life." Well, I'm looking forward to this film, and like I said when I mentioned this film probably about a month ago, is that, Spike Lee, I'm a big Spike Lee fan, but I am more a fan of his nonfiction film, his documentaries, and his films of stage productions than I am of his fictional films. His early films, probably his first 5 films, were groundbreaking and historic and all of that. I can't take any of that away, but I am not a fan of how Spike ends most of his movies. All of them. Almost. I just am not a fan of it. He is a supreme auteur. So, it's not a criticism. I'm just telling you about my taste in movies. I think he makes a great 70%. The front end of his movies are masterful. The end leave a little something to be desired for me. But I will continually say, and I will stand by this, that I believe Spike Lee is one of probably 3 or 4 of the best documentary filmmakers that we have now and maybe ever. And if I wanted a stage production to be filmed, I would want Spike Lee would be my first choice to do it. I think he knows how to capture the feeling of being in the theater. And so you're not watching a stage production like you're watching a video of a stage production. You're watching it as if you're in the theater, which is a totally different experience. And he knows how to capture that. That's a talent. So I'm really looking forward. And David Byrne is quite the performer. And I never had the opportunity. No, let me take that back. I had the opportunity. I never took advantage of the opportunity to see the Talking Heads when I could have seen the Talking Heads, a decision that I will eternally regret. 3 artists that I could have seen. 4 artists that I could have seen that I didn't take advantage of that I will regret. Talking Heads, David Bowie, The Police, and Luther Vandross. Didn't see any of them live. Wish I had. That said, this is the next best thing, so I look forward to this production. And if anyone can bring this to the small screen and do it justice, I think it's Spike Lee and HBO. So that is it for this segment. Next, let me tell you what I'm talking about next, because I cannot wait. And I will tell you that if you're tired, or if you didn't like the first end of this, please stay for this next segment, because the theater owners, now Tenet, as I said, I first reported, they've decided to postpone indefinitely, as yours truly has said several times. I'm patting myself on the back. Well, John Fithian, of the chief lobbyist for the Theater Owners of America, is speaking out about that and why he's so disappointed. When it was like an obvious thing if you're paying attention. What John Fithian needs to know, I'll get into that rant later. So listen, go get a stiff drink or your edibles or whatever it is you need to enjoy the next segment, food, whatever, or, go to the rest stop, take a bathroom break, get back on the road if you're listening to me, if you're driving, And we will talk all about the theater owners speaking out about Tenet when we get back. Thank you guys very much for listening. Don't go away.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right. We are back. Yes, Jack, I told you I was waiting for this. All right, we're back. As you guys know, and I talk about all the time lately, movie theaters have been devastated by the coronavirus since the pandemic has forced cinemas to close all over the country and essentially all over the world, and it wiped out the summer blockbuster season. Exhibitors have long hoped that the August releases of Christopher Nolan's Tenet and Disney's live-action remake of Mulan would kick off a movie-going revival. However, those plans suffered a major setback on Monday, because Warner Brothers, as I've reported earlier, said it's going to push back the debut of Tenet to later in 2020, while acknowledging the difficulty of distributing a tentpole film while COVID-19 infection rates were spiking across the U.S. Now, our friend, my boy, John Fithian, the head of the National Association of Theater Owners, the exhibition industry's top lobbyist, says he is disappointed by the decision and is urging studios to start releasing upcoming movies as planned. He believes that Hollywood needs to embrace the new normal. Theaters won't be open in every part of the country or the world until there's a vaccine. But he believes that in many communities where coronavirus cases are declining or have flattened, that it's safe to return to cinemas. Fithian notes that theaters have instituted new safety protocols and cleaning procedures, but they can't welcome back guests if there's no new releases to play. In 2 interviews with Variety, conducted before and after Warner Brothers announced that it was delaying Tenet, Fithian outlined the changes facing the theater business and reiterated that he believes that it's time to turn marquee lights back on. Now, as I said, as you just heard, I got the rest of this from Variety. It was an interview that they compiled. Actually, it's a combination of 2 interviews they did with him. And you're going to hear what my boy has to say. And then I will give you my opinion as usual. All right, here we go. Warner Brothers announced today that Tenet will move off its April 12th release date and will debut at some point in 2020. What is your reaction? Here's what he said. Distributors should stick with their dates and release their movies because there's no guarantee that more markets will open later this year. Unless there's a vaccine that's widely available, there will not be 100% of the markets open. Because of that, films should be released in markets where it is safe and legal to release them, and that's about 85% of markets in the U.S. and even more globally. They should release their movies and deal with this new normal. Studios may not make the same amount of money that they did before, but if they don't start distributing film, there's going to be a big hole in their balance sheets. This is a $42 billion a year business. Most businesses would take 85% of that instead of zero, which is what happens if they wait for all the markets to open up. Okay. I was going to read all the questions, but I have to interject on this. They're not taking a zero on their balance sheets. That's why Universal released Trolls World Tour. And if you listen to my last show, some other studios, including Universal, released up to 21 different movies, either to streaming or video on demand. In other words, they're not going to have a hole in their balance sheets. They're going to make their money back. Okay? I'm sorry this is happening to theaters. But this guy's plan is basically the president's plan, which was, well, the rates are low in Texas and in Florida and in Arizona, so we might as well start opening up again. And you see what's happening there. So, I'm telling you, Warner Brothers is not going to gamble $200 million just to appease John Fithian and the theater owners when ultimately, if they absolutely have to, they'll release this film on streaming or video on demand or in some other way. They'll make their money back, but they're not going to throw it out there just to flop. They're not going to do that, John Fithian. You should know that, and you should be working with them. All right, next question. Has Warner Brothers kept you in the loop as it weighs what to do? Now, here's his answer. Absolutely. Warner Brothers and Disney, now Disney, is releasing Mulan, have been great partners in sharing data and in calling us and letting us know their thinking. At the same time, we've kept them fully informed of what we are seeing. I have tremendous respect for the challenges that they are facing in their own business model. I look at this as a great partnership, but at the same time, I think it's a big mistake to keep delaying these movies. Yeah, he's made that clear. Here is the next question. Will the Tenet delay have a domino effect, and will other theaters move to their release date? We don't know that yet. That's his answer. Here's the next question. Will this prevent major theater chains from reopening? We don't know that either, is his answer. It might prevent AMC from reopening if they keep digging a hole. Next question. Theater owners have complained privately that they feel like the media is rooting for them to fail, while spilling a great deal of ink on the rising popularity of streaming services like Netflix. Do you think media coverage has been fair? Okay. I know that I've been saying these things, but of course I doubt they're talking about little old me. Here's his answer. I think the coverage has been mixed in its fairness. First of all, throughout all of this, our biggest concern has been on the risk levels associated with going to theaters. We have demonstrated with science and by establishing careful protocols that people can come back to theaters safely. However, the media prefers to cover the more alarmist news about risk levels. They cite a Texas Medical Association chart that lists movie theaters as being riskier than airlines. That's not based on science, and yet it's getting play all over the place, including in the New York Times and on national broadcast television. And when they cover the California shutdown, they talk about movie theaters closing without acknowledging that 10 movie theaters were open in the entire state. The economic challenges we face are very real. Without additional help from Congress, theater companies and employees will be in a very, very bad position. And that's not unique to movie theaters. There are lots and lots of businesses that are struggling to survive this. Okay. I agree with the second part, that without additional help, some of these theaters are going to go under. And at first I was going to say it was going to be the individual theaters. Now, some of the larger chains, the largest chain, AMC, is really in bad trouble. So he's right as far as that's concerned. I'm not familiar with the study he's talking about that says that theaters are more dangerous than airlines, but I would put them on equal footing. It's not a safe place to be, in my assessment and from what I've read. Anyway, here's the next question. What kind of federal assistance do movie theaters need? Here's his answer. When we started this battle in March and April, everyone anticipated that the closures would cause economic pain, but they thought that this would be done by early July. So we went to Congress and lobbied to get our loans and liquidity and to get unemployment expanded for our 150,000 furloughed workers. We were successful on the unemployment part and only partially successful on the loan part. That's because the loans were never fully implemented by the Fed and the Treasury. Both Congress and the administration bungled some of those loan programs. Now we're back lobbying for the next round of relief legislation, which Congress should start considering this week. It includes better and additional extended benefits for furloughed workers, and it will hopefully make loans easier to obtain, so it can help theaters survive this financially. I agree 100% with John Fithian on that answer. First answer, I've totally agreed with him, ever that I know of. Here's the next question. Why did you join AMC, Regal, and other chains to sue the state of New Jersey to compel the governor to let you reopen? Great question. Here's his answer. movie theaters throughout the country have spent a great deal of time making sure that the right safety protocols are in place. We figured out how to reopen with distancing, enhanced sanitation, and other practices. We've hired epidemiologists to consult with, and we've worked with operational experts. We don't want to reopen early or unsafely. We just want to open at the same time as similarly situated institutions. In New Jersey, churches and synagogues are open, but movie theaters are not. That makes no sense. Churches are more dangerous than movie theaters. People sing, they talk, they hug each other, all activities that can spread the virus. In movie theaters, people are sitting and looking at screens for 2 hours. They're wearing masks except for those moments when they're eating popcorn or sipping Coke. So we brought a constitutional claim that we believe we have a good case. We asked for a temporary restraining order, and which was not granted. But those are rare. But we should have our case heard in a few days or weeks, and we anticipate a good result. In New Jersey or in New York or some of the other states where theaters are closed, COVID rates are stable or they're going down. Let me repeat that, folks. In New Jersey or New York or other states where theaters are closed, COVID rates are stable or they're going down. Think there's a correlation there? Maybe. Here we go. Unlike restaurants that source their food locally or bars that get alcohol from certain distributors, we serve movies, and movies are a national and global commodity. If studios aren't releasing them, we can't make money. The pandemic is an existential threat to the industry. We need to get to new movies into the theaters, and we need to get them in right now. Theaters are open in most places, and if this drags out much longer, we're going to have a problem. We've had 4 months with no revenues, and we've had fixed costs such as leases and insurance. When you have fixed costs and no revenues, that's a problem. I agree with that. I agree with that's a problem. I don't agree with opening. Here's the next question. You mentioned restaurants and bars being open, but some public health experts think that having indoor dining and drinking has led to the surge in cases. Isn't that an argument against reopening theaters? Here's his answer. People are getting sick in churches as we speak. Man, he's on the churches. Dozens of people have been at church functions and gotten sick. We have had to confront this issue as a society. How do we approach minimum risk activities such as movie-going and eating in restaurants? Does society choose to shut everything down until there's a vaccine? And by the way, bars are about as high risk an activity as there can be because people drink too much and they stop wearing masks and social distancing. People in our theaters wear masks and socially distance. Most of them are trying to find balance where we can open up with the right protocols in place and keep our patrons and our employees safe. And his final question, will the major movie chains still be around if they can't reopen until there's a vaccine? Here's his answer. They'll still be around. They'll just be under completely different ownership. Many will have to go through bankruptcy. Some will reorganize. Others will fold. I have no doubt that on the other side of this, cinemas will be stronger than ever and moviegoing will come back bigger than it was before. But if we don't find a way to reopen, a lot of jobs will be lost and a lot of companies will go away. Okay, here's the thing. And listen, John Fithian is, as I said early in this article, is the chief lobbyist for movie theaters, and he's doing his job. And I get that. But this is where I think he's doing them a disservice, or this is where we disagree. And it goes right to the end of this article. I'm going to quote him again. He says, I have no doubt on the other side of this, cinemas will be stronger than ever, and moviegoing will come back bigger and better, or back bigger than it was before. Now, that sounds a lot like somebody who lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And here's the deal. This is a paradigm shift. This is as they say, I usually hate to use this cliche, but we're going into the new normal. Yes, we're going to get a vaccine. Maybe. That's a maybe, folks. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm just a science guy. We've been working on an AIDS vaccine for decades. There is no guarantee we're going to have a vaccine. I know we're in testing phase on this one. We've been having testing phases on AIDS vaccines too, by the way. So there's no guarantee we're going to have a vaccine. This thing might be just like a deadlier strain of the influenza that we see come around every year, but we need to get a control of it. So people's habits are going to change more or less permanently because of this. I'm not saying theaters are going to go away. They're not. But what his theater owners need to do is start working on a way to adapt to this new normal. And that doesn't mean, sanitizing things and distancing necessarily. That might be part of it. But part of it is you need to learn, you got to figure out a way to work with these studios and figure out a way to work with the studios and this streaming that is a tidal wave that you cannot hold back anymore, and how you can do both. How this tentpole movie Tenet might only be able to screen at the theater at a premium. Maybe you got to pay $50 to see Tenet safely in a theater if you want that experience. Maybe the movie experience isn't going to be as common as it used to be. Might be exclusive. I think their time would be better spent right now talking to people like Warner Brothers about, can we have a limited run of Tenet in our theaters on an exclusive basis a month before you guys ultimately kick it over to HBO Max, because that's probably what's going to happen. Same with Mulan. Can we have an exclusive run of Mulan at a pumped up price before it goes to Disney Plus? Because that's the new normal that's going to happen, I believe. But they have to work out something. But thinking things are going to go back the way they were, and we're going to have this better than ever return, just like we're going to have this monster third and fourth quarter that I keep hearing somebody say in briefings, that's not going to happen, folks. And it's not because I'm a negative Nelly. I want it to happen. But I'm just, I just happen to pay attention to science. And I know a little bit about it. And if you look at what's going on, it's not going to happen. And to keep putting that out there is giving people false hope, and it's taking us in directions we don't need to go. It's a waste of time. That's what I'm saying. It's a waste of time. So I guess I'm one of these media outlets that sounds like I'm cheering for it to happen, and I'm not. I'd just rather we spend time on things. We are intelligent human beings, and we adapt. That's what makes us human beings. That we have this reason where we can work through stuff and change, instead of saying we're going to be stuck in the same way. Because we're stuck in this rut. If we go back to the theaters like he's talking about, we'll be at the spike until we're World War Z. And so that might be a new franchise. Michael Bay is making that movie we talked about. Maybe he knows something, I don't know. Anyway, I'm running over. Next, I'm going to talk about somebody who's become a big player in this thing, and she's going the way of streaming, folks. Elizabeth Moss. I'll be back in a second. I got to go get some refreshments. I worked up a sweat. Thanks for listening. I'll be back after this. All right. I'm feeling better, Jack. Guys, that John Fithian to work me up. We're back. And you know how I've been telling you every time it seems I report about a major star or a rising star, they have their own production company. It seems like if you don't have your production company, you're not really a professional actor anymore, or you're not a player in this thing. You're just kind of like a character actor. Well, Elizabeth Moss is officially a player. Elizabeth Moss is making a giant leap in developing and producing her own content. The Handmaid's Tale star has inked a joint first-look deal with the show's platform Hulu and Fox 21 Television Studios. Moss has also launched her own production company called Love Squalor Pictures. I love that name. Which will focus on creating TV and film content for all platforms. As part of this deal, Moss is developing an anthology titled Black Match for Hulu, in which she will star. The series is described as a psychosexual neo-noir thriller set in modern-day Los Angeles and comes from an original script by Ian McCullough. Wow, psychosexual neo-noir. I gotta watch it. Moss has tapped former WME agent Lindsay McManus to head her company as president of film and TV. McManus was most recently running Diablo Cody's first production company, Vita Vera Films, under a 3-year overall deal with Warner Brothers Television. Here's a quote. "I am so excited to have formed this company and established this partnership with Lindsay, to find material ourselves and have real ownership as producers. We want to develop strong, unique stories for the big and small screen that we feel are inclusive and represent the world that we all see around us," end quote, said Moss in a statement. She continues, We are very proud of the slate that we are building, comprised of projects that run the gamut from broad commercial fare to darker, more challenging works, like The Psychosexual. Craig Ewich and Hulu have been amazing partners on The Handmaid's Tale and these past 3 seasons, and I'm thrilled to be starting a creative partnership with Bert Salke and everybody at Fox 21. End quote. News of Moss's deal comes exactly 2 weeks after one of the projects she is already set to star in via Love Squalor. And I'm talking about the UCP limited series Candy. That was announced as coming down the pipeline. Here's a quote. Elizabet is a relentless creative force in the world of television and film, both in front of and behind the camera. She has been an integral part of Hulu's success, from her Emmy Award-winning performance on The Handmaid's Tale to her singular vision for the show as an executive producer, said Hulu Senior Vice President of Original Content, Craig Ewich. We are honored to be the streaming home of the amazing stories she and her production company will create, and we cannot wait to see Love Squalor Pictures bring Black Match to life for our viewers, end quote. Man, I would love to work for that company just to have Love Squalor on my card. Here's another quote from one of our colleagues. Lizzie Moss, in our opinion, has been a huge part of 2 of the greatest series of all time, Mad Men and Handmaid's Tale. Top of the Lake wasn't too shabby either. That's not a coincidence. She brings an intelligent and emotional vulnerability that is exceedingly rare, not just among her contemporaries, but among the strongest actors in the history of the medium. That same powerful intelligence and great taste is also evident in Lizzie's work as a producer. And we feel lucky and excited to be working with her and Lindsay as they embark on their company's journey, added Bert Salke, president of Fox 21 TV Studios. Now, those of you who've been listening to me know I'm a big fan of these women who have production companies. I mentioned, Elizabeth Banks and, Oren Ishii, Lucy Liu, and what they're doing. And I'm really looking forward to this because I think that everything that this guy Salke said about her is true. I don't think it's a coincidence that she was a key part of Mad Men, and obviously she's the lead of The Handmaid's Tale, and Top of the Lake is pretty good. And all of those all of them, especially the last 2, were successful. A lot of it was because of Elizabeth Moss's involvement in them. So I'm looking forward to Love Squalor Productions and seeing what they come out with in the psychosexual realm. Here is some breaking Writers Guild news. Members of the Writers Guild of America, West, saw their earnings grow a healthy 3.1% to $1.68 billion last year, thanks to gains in, listen to this, television and digital platforms. The Guild's newly released annual report notes that the number of writers working in feature films rose 4% last year compared to 2017, while the level of employment for TV and digital platforms increased by 3.2%. The WGA West report also reassured members that the Guild, which has been embroiled in a bitter legal battle with top Hollywood talent agencies for more than a year, they were about to go on strike earlier this year, is on solid financial footing. The report from the Membership and Finance Committee, chaired by Michelle Maroney, was sent to members Tuesday night. Here's a quote. "We are presenting the Guild's annual financial report at a tumultuous time for the industry and our country," the committee said. It continues, the report, which covers the Guild's fiscal year ending March 31st, 2020, reflects the onset but not the full impact of the economic disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Next year's report will doubtlessly give us a more complete picture of the effect of the pandemic on the Guild's finances, end quote. And here's a segment out of another part of the report I saw. For now, however, members should feel confident that the Guild is on a strong financial footing with significant reserves that will enable us to face and surmount the current uncertainties. Earnings of television and digital platform writers reported for 2019 rose 4.7% to 1.17 billion. Total employment was up 3.2%, with 5,118 writers reporting income from television and digital platforms. Though this figure is likely to increase with later reporting, that's a big increase. And that's why I'm reporting this story, because it's having an impact all over the industry. The Guild has noted that the actual numbers for TV writers' compensation are not reflected in its figures because it doesn't include the overscale income. I'm not going to get into that, but it does include all the income, which means the number's even larger. Screenwriter earnings remained flat in 2019 at $493 million, though this figure is likely to increase also with later reporting. Screenwriter employment rose by 4%. So either screenwriters are making less on average, or they haven't added up all the numbers yet. I'm hoping it's the latter. Anyway, residuals collected in 2019 grew 1.9% to an all-time high of $471 million. And that's a 2% increase over the previous year. Residuals increased 1.5% in television to $311 million and 2.7% in features, and that's in films, to almost $160 million. Now, residuals are income that's earned through syndication and repeat broadcasts, like Friends or Seinfeld. If you were a writer on there and that was part of your deal, you have to negotiate that. The Guild has a small operating surplus for the fiscal year of $335,000 based on total revenues of $38.5 million, and that's down from last fiscal year. There are a lot of other numbers, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds. What I really wanted to, while I was reporting this, is that not only have studios in general profited, or the advent of streaming services helped out those companies that have them and that are growing, but also with the added viewership, you have added opportunities for people in the industry to make money, and it's going toward not only just the actors and the producers, but the writers, and that is a good thing. So as a writer myself, I am glad to see that there are more opportunities out there, and I think that the streaming service thing, other than, unfortunately, some of the theaters taking kind of a hit, is going to be a good thing ultimately for the industry. It gives the whole industry a lot more, a larger employment base, but also it makes it more nimble, actually, unless the internet crashes. That's the big, that's the big caveat out there. Just like a pandemic could take down might take down the movies. If something happened, if there was like an internet virus, say, that took down the internet and made it unsafe to be on the internet for a lot of people, which Mr. Robot would tell you that maybe that's the case already, it would be terrible for streaming as well. You know, there's always a risk. That's why they call it business. But I think this is a good thing. And I look forward to more opportunities out there for writers like myself and for actors and for anybody who wants to go out there and make the most of their talents. And finally, for this show, I just want to say I've been looking for more information on the extended Batman universe that's going to be on HBO Max, and I haven't been able to uncover anything other than what I reported a couple shows back. But I'm always on the look because that's something that I'm really excited about, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you and watching when it finally gets there. So, folks, that is going to be it for today's GSMC television podcast. As always, we're brought to you by the Gsmc Podcast Network. I'd like you to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show if you're not subscribed, and rate us and review us. Please write us a good review. Hopefully you heard something you liked. You can give us 5 stars. You can mention my name. I won't be upset. Even if it's a criticism, you can put it on there. But we would rather have 5-star reviews. Also, if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, that would be great. I'm always updating that. And remember, this is really important. Remember to email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com with any requests for the show or any feedback you have for me about this show, good and bad or bad. I read all emails on the show. Those people who listen to me or those people who have sent me emails that are not heavily profane, they will attest to the fact I'll read them on the show. I try to, if I can read it and edit it out, I'll read it. Sometimes I just can't read it at all because pretty much you just say bad words. I love the passion though. I do. Listen, we are in some strange and challenging times right now. Let's all try to pull through this together. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're in a worldwide pandemic. So what they say we should do and what seems to be working is first, not going to the movie. First, not going to movie theaters, but washing your hands often, limiting your close and personal interaction with people if you can. And if you go out, wear a mask. Please, just do it. It's something that we fundamentally all need to do. Even the president is saying we should wear a mask. Why? Because people are dying. So let's all wear a mask, folks. Please have a safe, very fun weekend. Until we meet again, I want you to stream with care. Jack and I love you guys. Be kind to one another. We'll be here next Tuesday. Give us a listen. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Soundcloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.